What's up, LEGO builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. The war for my LEGO city of Moenia Prime is reaching a tipping point because I just gave the Protectorate forces a missile-slinging Titan-class mech. And what can you really do against that? Well, today, I'll show you. The HADF have been cooking up some cutting-edge tech of their own, like robot dogs, giant tanks, and chainsaw machine guns. If you're ready for all that, don't forget to open fire on that like button, and let's get building. The HADF ground force is pretty well fleshed out at this point. I've got all the basic units covered, but my special forces need some work. I've only got one commando so far whose primary role is a sniper, so I'm going to need another more general purpose unit. He's going to have basically the same uniform, including the cloak I got from Clone Army Customs. I also found this dark green samurai helmet, which will help differentiate him from more common grunts, but still fits with the overall vibe. This particular commando is wielding the latest advancement in HADF firearms, a chainsaw-equipped machine gun. A loving blend of Warhammer 40k and Gears of War, this turned out better than I expected. And this will give the infantry a major advantage over the robots in close quarter combat and some upcoming expeditions. The HADF military recruits soldiers from all over the continent, but commandos only ever come from the secret vaults and training grounds of the capital city. Bearing an almost supernatural aura, these units have increased levels of intelligence and physical prowess. Regular grunts often joke that the reason no commando's face has ever been seen is because there's just a computer screen behind the mask. Just hope they didn't joke too loud. As the months-long stalemate continues to extend and casualties rise in Moenia Prime, they've been deployed to probe at Protectorate weak points, hoping to uncover the mysterious head of this faction and cut it off. I've been wanting some kind of infantry support drone for a while now. You can't have futuristic warfare without drones, and even though I'm not a huge fan of drones, they'll be a major help to the fire teams navigating the urban maze that is Moenia Prime. I'm gonna base this off the Boston Dynamics robot dog I'm sure you've all seen doing very concerning feats of strength and precision on the internet. But no need to panic, I'm sure they're just making the next fleet of food delivery robots over there. Let me know what you would name this drone in the comments. Drone warfare has become increasingly effective in the tight corners and narrow streets of Moenia Prime, helping cut down on the casualties and extend the eyes and ears of the HADF troops. Machines like this remotely operated combat-equipped technology, a rocket drone, can be deployed from trucks, tanks, and even aircraft to scout out potential ambushes or provide light fire support for infantry with its turret-mounted machine gun and grenade launchers. Its effectiveness in combat has quickly made it one of man's best friends in the fight against the machines. Alright, the appetizers are over and it's time to get to the main courses. I need some kind of large dropship that can ferry troops and supplies in and out of battles. Essentially, I need a Pelican or Republic dropship type of build. When it comes to designing aircraft, I like to start by picking out the windshield piece, which will dictate the aesthetic and overall scale of the build. I've got three options here for consideration. I really like the first one, but it feels too chunky and would probably work better for some kind of mining craft or dump truck. This next one is too sleek and narrow like a fighter jet cockpit, but this last one is just right. It's large but simple and is basically a giant version of the one on my helicopter, so I can build a similar looking cockpit to that and just scale it up. When I first started building this new world of Moenia Prime and the HADF, I had no real intentions of getting so deep into aircraft. I was more focused on tanks and troops, and given their aerodynamic shape and need for propulsion and wings, I only ever built a handful of flying ships in my life. But the story demands aircraft, so here I am, enjoying building them a lot more than I thought I would. I'm particularly excited for this one because I've always loved big, bulky dropships. I'm not sure if it was the Republic gunship or the Chinook helicopter that first sparked this love for me, but seeing some kind of large ship come bombing into a war zone, dropping off squads of heavily armed soldiers into the fight, has me celebrating like the Ewoks did after catching a year's worth of groceries during the Battle of Endor. The body will be a simple tube since I don't want to bite off more than I can chew trying to build something complicated, since at the end of the day it's just a carrier. The middle is dominated by the large hold used for soldiers and supplies and whatever else needs to be hauled around. I'm tiling it off and throwing in some light bluish gray ingots for a little color contrast and texture. The roof needs to be flat and round at the same time, so I made good use of cheese slopes, curved slopes, and some vented slope pieces to create a detailed looking aerodynamic shape. The front has openings for two vents, which will represent air intakes, vital for feeding the large engines powering this bad boy. The back of the ship is where I had the most trouble. I need it to slope inward and upward and backwards, basically all the wards, so I pulled out pretty much every kind of dark bluish gray slope I had, trying to get the right shape. Finally, with the help of some angled corner and inverted slope pieces, I was able to cap off the back, and then added some fins to help steer and stabilize the ship. Let me know in the comments if you like this stubby back, or if you think I should build more of a long tail like my previous helicopter. And speaking of that, I'm using the same rotor design again since it's simple and I like how it looks. However, this ship's gonna need to generate some extra lift being so big, so it's going to have 4 rotor mounts instead of 2. A similar layout to the craft scene in the Edge of Tomorrow movie, which is another great dropship design. These rotor builds have the perfect amount of Technic. Not too much, but just enough to provide good mobility and some awesome aesthetics. The last things needed before this ship can soar through the skies are some doors. I felt like this was the perfect spot to work in some more dark green. I don't feel like there's a need to camouflage these ships, but giving them some kind of green military markings will look good. I used a bar and some droid arms to create a special hinge that can drop the door down just a little so it can slide inside the hole a little to open and close properly. At first glance, the Long-Range Assault Carrier, or LRAC, may seem like a simple craft, but there are few things more valuable to the HADF than this. Its streamlined tubular body combined with the monstrous quad-propeller propulsion system make it the most efficient transport in the Army. The vertical takeoff and landing ability makes it vital for quickly deploying large amounts of troops and even armored vehicles or trucks into combat zones. It's the oldest vehicle currently in action, dating back to pre-Bio-War conflicts, but sometimes something is so simple it becomes timeless. These aren't being used in the current conflict since large, slow-moving aircraft are an easy target in an urban environment, but you can rest assured the HADF is going to have need of these real soon. Ooh baby, I've been anticipating this last build for months. I have the Cuspis and Gladiator tanks in action, but these are a little dated, and with the new threat the Protectorates and their tech pose, it's time to create the next generation of main battle tank. I'm using the same chassis as I did for the Cuspis 1, since I want this to be the next version of that tank, and it has the awesome suspension system I borrowed from Somers Lego, which is 3 pairs of independently moving wheels on axles that can move over just about any kind of obstacle. I did design the front and back of the tread system, which used some fun techniques to raise the front and back wheels up above the rest. Even though the chassis is the same design, it's wider and longer, and you can see the base is already about as big as the Cuspis 1, even with no armor plating or extra attachments, meaning this is going to be one big machine. And that armor plating is going to look very different. I'm going with a simpler camo scheme of dark bluish gray and dark green. This should better equip the tank for the new situation it will find itself in, since the old woodland camo is dated and isn't super effective in cities, and most futuristic tanks in other movies and games don't have camo. There's a raised section at the back which houses the beast of an engine powering this thing. I want to make sure it's got plenty of air, so I'm going to build a vented armor plate at the rear of the tank, and here I can throw in some more cool details, including the red and white stripes I like to include on all my tank builds. Once this vent's finished, it easily snaps into place on the back of the tank. Now the front is where things start to get interesting. I was able to get most of the slope work done, but when it came to covering the treads, I ran into a problem. The treads poke up above the body just enough so that when I tried to put the track covers on, they would run into the tread, preventing them from being properly connected. After much trial and error, I came up with this clever little design. I used a small dark bluish gray window frame and filled it in with a dark green window pane. This hollowed out brick created a space inside the track cover, big enough that when placed over the track, it still had room to move while allowing me to connect the track cover in the position I needed. It's a miracle Lego made those 2 pieces in those colors, or else I would have been in big trouble. The track skirts were a really good spot to hammer in the sci-fi aesthetic. Instead of just using regular tile to cover everything, I used these shields to create a serrated looking edge with some wedge plates at the back to change things up even more. I got the idea for this from concept images of South Korea's K3 main battle tank prototype. This tank looks very futuristic and sci-fi and has some wild looking tread skirts that I wanted to try making in Lego, and I think they turned out pretty well. Though I'm still working on the camo patterns. Unfortunately, the body was the easy part. Creating the turret was the real challenge. My main goal with this tank was to build something very futuristic and sci-fi-esque, and the best way to start with that is the cannon. It's the main feature and function of any tank, and the weirder it looks, the more sci-fi the tank will feel. While scrolling Flickr for tank inspiration, I came across this mock designed by Lego Finn. What intrigued me the most was the barrel. It's made from 2 gray rail pieces slightly spaced apart to create a, no surprise here, giant railgun. I'd never seen this technique before and immediately knew I wanted to try it out. I'm going to space my rails horizontally instead of vertically though, creating a wider, flatter cannon with some bricks and ingots in the middle forming the rest of the barrel. This will provide a good sense of scale for how big everything needs to be, and now I can build the turret around it. Pretty much all tanks, no matter how cool or unusual they are, share the same simple blocky base. The point of a tank after all is to be a giant mobile gun, and the body is just there to transport it. So I really need to kick things up a notch with the turret and think outside my normal building methods to create something weird. And I don't want you to think this tank just flew together over the course of the video. I spent about 3 months designing, building, breaking, and adjusting this build to be what it is today. I used to think that all the amazing mocks I saw online came together smoothly with no issues, but the more I've built and talked with other builders, the more I realize a final mock is the result of many mess-ups and failed designs. And that's not a bad thing. In fact, it's just part of the creation process. So if you find yourself intimidated by other builds or feeling like what you make never turns out as good as you want, remember, you'll get there, you just have to keep working at it. I studied a lot of other turret designs designs and learned that instead of using slopes all connected together on a plate, a lot of designers were using a series of panels connected by ball joints and other hinges to shape their turrets. This creates a series of aligned panels that captures the essence of a tank turret much better, so I tried it out making some chunky brick-built panels, with brackets and headlight bricks built in so I can add things like grenade launchers and railing to the sides. The top has a machine gun mount next to a turret hatch, as well as two brand new 360-degree rotating infrared and night vision capable optics. The back has more sensors and optics and a really fun surprise, but I'll save that for the showcase. The railings act as a defense against RPG and drone attacks, but also double as a great spot to store extra gear and stuff for the tank. The Cuspis 2 is our first look at the next generation of HADF warfare. It was still undergoing testing when the robot uprising happened, and the first platoons have only recently arrived at Moenia Prime, but they already have the protectorate lines threatening to break. Cuspis 1 tanks were seen to be vulnerable to the rail guns and plasma cannons of the mechs, but the Cuspis 2 rocks the next generation of advanced heat-resistant alloy armor capable of holding up much better against these new weapons. But new armor and paint jobs isn't even the best this tank has to offer. The Cuspis 2 is fitted with the most advanced cannon humanity has ever crafted. Able to punch through armor once thought impenetrable, advanced targeting systems can even lock onto and hit slow-moving aircraft. Multiple cameras and sensors give the crew a good view of their surroundings, and the juiciest of cherries on top is the automatic quad-barreled mortar system in the back of the turret, best used for raining down fiery destruction on smaller targets. Due to its immense size, the Cuspis 2 does struggle to navigate the tight city streets and can only cross certain bridges, limiting its range and effectiveness in Moenia Prime as time goes on.
Oh, come on!
The HADF are underdogs no more. These are some of the best vehicles I've ever built and have me so excited for phase 2 of this world. That being said, both vehicles can be improved. The next step is bladeless propulsion for the LRAC and a lower turret for the Cuspis 2. The Rocket Dog was a lot of fun to build and turned out perfectly, even though I'm not a huge fan of drone technology. I would say stay tuned for more lore on the commandos, but what the HADF does in its secretive capital city might be best left alone for now. Don't forget to let me know what you think of these advancements in the comments, and until next time, happy building.